On this special episode of the Layover Live, Aaron Nissen stops by to talk about predictions and trends for 2022. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 174 of the Layover Live. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights, and Happy New Year to all of you. Now, as an industry, we've had to continually adapt to these changes in our budgets and in staffing, travel behavior, stakeholder needs, and a whole lot more than that. We continue to see big changes as well in things like consumer behavior, including the way that we shop, how we interact and socialize, and how we even travel, to name just a few there. Now, even though 2021 was still very challenging, and we face yet another wave of COVID with Omicron variant upon us right now, it does feel like that we have turned a corner, which presents an opportunity for destination marketers to continue to show their value to their communities and their stakeholders. Now, being the new year, we always like to kick things off here on the Layover and take a look at what the future might hold in store for us. I think that's always great to do when we're starting out a new year like 2022. And there is no doubt that this year may still be a bit unpredictable, I know, but as destinations look to 2022, there is certainly some optimism and hope. And as I like to do every year when I'm doing these shows around trends and predictions, I'm going to bring in our Director of Digital Strategy, Aaron Nissen, to the show to try and help make heads or tails of what 2022 might look like. So Aaron, once again, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be here, Jason, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you, man. I felt like I haven't seen you in a couple weeks, so nice to be able to catch up and see your face again. And again, we'll see how things play out. But I want to talk about looking ahead now, Aaron, to 2022. It's always good to kind of get an idea of what's coming. So maybe share what trends that you're seeing that we should all be paying attention to, and maybe focusing to the top three.
Three trends. That's tough to boil it down to. I think given the more recent Omicron shift in the pandemic and, kind of reverting back a little bit, I think I want to, maybe talk about the three trends being traveler behavior. There's some distinct behavioral changes. Group trends. There's a couple of group trends I want to kind of cover that roll under one theme. And then marketing innovation would be the other one that I'll elaborate on. Okay. So, starting with traveler behavior, I think what we're seeing is due to the Omicron, we're shifting backwards a little bit. Hopefully that is a short-term thing. It looks like it may just be a blip for 2 to 3 months as we start the year. But the impact of that is still kind of pervasive. Of what we've seen the last year essentially is that, international travel is still going to be delayed. So if you're in an international markets, the expectations there should be really low. The other thing that, as a result is looking at road trips locally. That's still going to be a predominant form of travel. People, just don't want to take the risk of going through airports, still looking for those outdoor experiences, etc. Due to, I think that we've seen a lot of news about mental health and just, generally health and wellness and the COVID weight gains, guilty as charged. Health and wellness is another trend that we're expecting to see a lot more activity on as people look to take more, health-based trips, outdoors, just spa trips, wellness, a little away from more of the nightlife type activities. And I think one of the other big unique trends that really should be looked at is digital nomads, the idea of working remotely from anywhere in the world. Many companies during the pandemic have shifted to that. So it creates opportunities for people just to, go sit in a nice destination, summer's new, for a couple weeks and just work remotely. So that's something that we should also be, looking at quite closely. On the group trends, what we're seeing is smaller meetings. That's been pervasive for the last, year and a half. That's still continuing. People just don't want to take the big meetings. And as a result, you're seeing more hybrid meetings, hybrid or even virtual. But a lot of event planners are doing the hybrid approach for those consumers who aren't, confident in traveling or being in person. And that trend is going to continue. So looking at a few other trends with group, regional events, versus, longer haul, air travel events is going to be kind of the pattern we see. Just from a safety perspective, it's easier to get people to attend your event when they don't have to worry about going through airports, etc. So, especially for regional associations or any other, regional businesses, those kind of drive events will be, really key. So, lastly, competition for group sales is going to be immense this year. We're seeing a lot of changes in that landscape. And so that's kind of the last thing that I'll elaborate on. And then as we look at marketing innovation, there's a lot happening in the marketing front. So the big things, we're seeing with marketing innovation is continuing to digitize. It's all, budgets are shifting digital rapidly. And, we've seen this through the pandemic, the growth of data. Data-driven marketing is continuing to scale at a rapid pace. That's not going to go away. And then finally, changes in the social media landscape. I think this is kind of an interesting one. I think this is the first year that Instagram is going to be the predominant social media channel, surpassing Facebook. Facebook is still important. It's a necessary evil. But Instagram is kind of the key there. TikTok has grown immensely, and I think that's another channel that DMOs need to start embracing more, as that's quickly becoming, I'd say that the third most important social channel, if not the second next to Instagram. So I think there's going to be some changes there, and DMOs should kind of prep for that a little bit.
Yeah, all good stuff there, and comment on a couple of those, at least one from each bucket, right? So you talked about first on the traveler behavior side, this concept of digital nomads. I agree with you on that. I think something that people are getting more and more comfortable with, right? These were people that, just a few years back you didn't hear much about, or they had like these dream jobs where they could go travel wherever they wanted and work. Now that we're getting more and more comfortable with doing work, and we found out in many ways, and it's really even more efficient for some folks. I agree with you that you're going to see a burst in that, so I like to see that on your list. You talked about on the group trend side about hybrid meetings aren't going away, although we're seeing some data with meetings searches and things like that starting to recover. I agree with you. The hybrid approach isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I think we're going to be looking for ways to play both. So I think you're definitely spot on there. And then your idea of this kind of continued digitization from your marketing innovation bucket or your pillar. I agree with you on that as well. And I want to comment on that because we are seeing more and more folks shift more and more into digital leading. I'm even seeing some DMOs talking about a paid media first approach, which is something you never would have heard of even as little as 12 months ago. So all really, really good stuff there. So digging a little deeper now, Aaron, I think based on those three trends you shared right across those buckets, how can destinations then maybe best prepare for the road ahead and maybe take the same approach with some suggestions across group sales and across then marketing teams?
Yeah, for sure. So I think looking at the group sales side, what DMO should be prepping for is, first of all, getting a content strategy for group sales. We've seen, a lot of customers that we work with realize, during the pandemic, they don't have really strong content for the group sales or meeting planners. And so we've seen a lot of destinations start building out content strategies where they're producing content on a regular basis, targeting messaging to different audiences or segments, right? So content for religious groups or content for sports groups, to be more specific and succinct, and help meeting planners, to get to the crux of the questions that they may have and be inspired from your destination. So content strategy, I think, is a really key stepping stone for most destinations at this point. And then the other thing I would recommend is start getting into LinkedIn a lot more. LinkedIn has evolved tremendously and is continuing to. It is, I would say the equivalent to what, Facebook is for your leisure travelers. So you should be, producing content on a regular basis, as part of your content strategy, putting it into LinkedIn and disseminating that or distributing it there. And then putting, paid budget behind promoted content there. Even advertising. It is a bit more expensive on LinkedIn, but it does work, and it helps you reach a very succinct B2B audience, which is, all group sales essentially. And then, lastly, the competition in the group sales space is going to be tremendous. There's still a bit of an aversion in the industry to go towards big cities because of just how dense and populated they are. So tier 2 and tier 3 cities are going to be, probably the sweet spot, but, larger cities are lowering prices to try and compete with the smaller markets. So it's creating a real competition. You don't want to compete on price because that's not always the best way. So things such as customer service is going to be critical. Which of your properties and hotels and facilities have the labor and the staffing to deliver a quality experience. That's going to be something meeting planners look for. I've been traveling a bit recently, and you see the impacts. There's hotels that are short staffed still, and that's going to have an impact on meetings. And so, as a destination, you want to make sure you're working closely with your partners to ensure that you can, host events of significant size and deliver quality service, and giving that assurances to meeting planners when they're in their planning phases. On the leisure side, or traveler behaviors, looking at them, I think this is similar to what we talked about last year. Focusing on that road trip content, kind of the near and drive markets would be key, but also starting to develop niche campaigns again for things like health and wellness. Targeting people with some of your health-based facilities, whether it be outdoor kind of adventures or more kind of like spa, yoga retreats, things like that. I think we're going to see a lot of health and wellness type travel this year. So again, creating content and micro campaigns to support a niche like that. And then the digital nomads. What content does your destination have for hey, come here and work. Stay for a couple of weeks and work remotely. We saw during the pandemic, I think it was Bermuda and a couple of the Caribbean islands offer like, hey, come here for a year, you can work remotely, and we'll incentivize you. And I think that's, on one extreme. For now, I think destinations need to be thinking about like those short, maybe a couple week holidays where people can, find that work-life balance and still travel. So I think getting content geared up for that, trying to find some of those individuals who are probably more in the tech, sector. But I think it's really broadened as to who can work remotely now. So I think just continuing to look at things like, niche content such as that, and then last minute bookings. This is unfortunately the way the data we're seeing is, people tend to take trips last minute. So starting to, just think about content in shorter life cycles. I mean, you probably want to keep a blend of both, but, just realizing that customers are taking consumers are taking trips, on last minute notice within a couple of days. They're looking for deals, last minute getaway specials. And so that's all kind of content that, marketers need to, be on top of. And then I think the big changes, I think kind of goes across both group sales marketing and leisure marketing would be, like I said, the data side of things. As we move more and more to digital campaigns or digital media, we need to start prioritizing things like first-party data, which is your own cookie on your site, newsletters, and email addresses. What we're seeing in that space, in the data space, is a lot of vendors, because of the loss of third-party cookies, which was delayed until next year, they're trying to find new ways to resolve identities and identify whom individuals are, all privacy compliant. And what they're doing is coming up with these new concepts like identity resolution. So for example, Adara has their identity graph where they, partner with a lot of different data providers. They get things like email addresses, and they find ways to connect that to phone numbers, to addresses, to build a unique profile about an individual. And so this is going to become very predominant this year as, cookies are set to, maybe be gone next year. Looking at these identity resolution tools will be really critical. So for a DMO, you need to be, protecting your first party data, trying to collect more first party data, and finding the right data partners to work with who will, treat your data and respect it, and, and then augment your marketing abilities by providing you more identity resolution options. So I think that's, probably the big trend that I'm excited for this year. On a more, a functional level, again, smaller campaigns. Instead of doing the big summer or winter campaign, break it down by topics or themes, health and wellness or digital nomad, or, work-life balance campaigns. Go smaller and, do shorter sprints. This allows you to be more agile and react to the marketplace as, COVID flares up or new challenges arise. You can react and move a little bit quicker as opposed to having a big 6-month or 5-month campaign that runs, with one kind of brand, big push. And then lastly, I would honestly say video. Video's really coming into its own. We're seeing all the engagement stats that really steer towards, the need for video in short form, not 2 to 3 minute videos, 1 to 2 minutes, max. Try to get 15, 30-second splices and like cut and stitch different videos together out of your B-roll footage, etc. Just to be more present on the visual mediums like Instagram and TikTok, etc. So video, I think, is definitely a priority. And then its little sibling is audio. Audio is a little bit tougher for DMOs, but we're seeing, the opportunities around podcast. Podcasts have grown and scaled dramatically during the pandemic, but it poses a slightly different challenge. Audio is not typically a brand marketing push. You need to think through who your audience is, who the recipients are, and what they're going to do with that information. So a great example would be creating a podcast for locals, having local guests and influencers on to talk about some of the hidden aspects of a community, or some of the unique aspects of that community, to really try to build up a groundswell of community of locals who are understanding, hey, I didn't know that existed in this city, and those locals could be advocates and share it with their friends on TikTok or Instagram. And so it's kind of a slightly different approach to marketing, but it's creating really strong content through podcasts or other audio formats. So a little bit tougher, and it's more of a longer term play. But I think given the pandemic, we've really seen the need to engage more with your locals, provide more support for your community, and engage your community. So I think podcasts in that flavor would work really well for destinations.
Yeah, Aaron, to comment on that, could not agree with you more on the audio side, right? Looking at what Kristen Reynolds and her team are doing with the Long Island Tea in New York, where they're doing exactly what you're talking about, finding better ways to connect with locals, promote their destinations, remind their stakeholders of all the great content they put together and their value. So it is a lot of work, but I agree with you. It's another, you got to meet the market where it's at. And today they're consuming things through video, which you talked about, these short snippets, through TikTok and platforms like that, meeting them on podcasting platforms, which we do here on the Layover as well. But you're right. That's where your market's at. That's where their eyeballs are at. That's where their attention's at. So finding ways to reach them through video and audio, I think, is smart. And then you mentioned data as well, right? There's been a lot of talk over this past year or two about data and the changes that have started to happen around how we collect and use that information. In 2022, though, however, it's going to be the year where we start to really, truly feel the impact of those things, right? With all these changes coming. So, yeah, very insightful there and good stuff. So wrapping up then, Aaron, one more question before we send you away. The fact that you do get out there, you do a lot of consulting work, you do a lot of workshops, and you're great at doing those things. I'd love to get your advice or advice that you'd like to share for DMOs out there heading into this new year. Do you have anything you want to share with them at all to better prepare? Yeah. Right? The $1 million question, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say continue to remain agile. Obviously, I think we were all getting really excited for coming through the pandemic, and then Omicron and the Christmas holidays hit, and we're seeing quite a reversion. So I think it's going to be another year of being very agile and creating multiple strategies, multiple plans, and being able to just pivot and adapt. To make that successful, it also means scaling things down. Not having these big grandiose campaigns, but doing smaller ones, as I mentioned, because then you can adapt more quickly, and you don't have to build out big campaign plans. You can build smaller ones and be more fluid that way. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things is agility, and then adapting. Like I said, the group sales side is completely changing. It's smaller events, hybrid events, like all those things I mentioned, but the competition is ramping up. So again, just trying to be very agile and adapt your how you've done things in the past by building out content strategies. Maybe going smaller with some of your audiences or venue or meeting groups, because the competition's fierce. And for many destinations who are in the meeting space, they have tax burdens and payments on their facilities. So, it's going to be a really fierce kind of sector for the group side. So again, just being agile and adapting your approaches, and that, treat your group sales very similar to your leisure side. Creating content strategies, I think, will be very important for destinations this year.
Yeah, I love that agile approach, Aaron. I think it's smart advice, and thanks for coming on and sharing that today.
My pleasure.
You bet. And thanks for tuning in each and every week. If you're not subscribed, please do so now. We're also available through audio podcasts, through iTunes and Spotify. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.